McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop, Season 3, Episode 10. Too many night enthusiasts spoil the kitchen. October 17th, 1921. Continued. Diary. I think it was the worst thing I could possibly imagine. I stood inside the closet, temporarily hidden from view, and I felt my heart pound like it's never pounded before in my life. The night enthusiasts were in our living room. They were in our living room. The secret basement of McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop had been infiltrated. I couldn't think straight. I honestly couldn't. I pressed my hand against my nose and mouth and took deep breaths. All I knew was that I was scared. There was a kind of animalistic fear all through me. I felt like I'd been invaded, like something was crawling under the surface of my skin. Then, through the panic, a thought came to me. They haven't found me yet. First things first, I needed to get out of here. At first glance, diary, that sounds like a very cowardly thing. Me running off while my friends were still tied up all over the secret basement. But if any night enthusiast got a hold of me, we would all be friends tied up in the basement, and all equally useless. My only hope of helping them later was getting away now. I stood behind the door, my mind still fogged with shock, and I waited for silence on the other side of the door. While I waited for the night enthusiasts to vacate the living room, my mind spun over how they had possibly found us. Mr. McGillicuddy had been right. We should never have left the pawn shop. We should have stayed quarantined for months. I should never have left. Was this all my fault? I'd gone in and out and in and out after being expressly told not to. Someone must have followed us here that last time. They'd been spying. Either that, or whatever magic Raster had been using to track Noble, he'd started applying to the rest of us. Whether it was through my negligence and a simple spy in the corner, or whether it was due to a new form of magic, either way, we'd been found. We'd spent years keeping this place a secret. So much time and work had gone into keeping this place safe and good. Oh, Mr. McGillicuddy's beautiful doors. They had better not trash this place. My room! Oh, and that black bathroom I was so obsessed with. Someone had to get the night enthusiasts out of here. This was our home. We'd been safe. Now the worst had happened. Diary, I felt my stomach shrink as soon as I thought it. This could be the end of us. I'd pictured the war between the night enthusiasts and the members of the pawn shop as something that went on for decades. If anyone won, it would obviously be us. But this looked a lot like them winning. Would they kill us? What would they do with us? I squeezed my hands into fists and listened again. The living room sounded more hectic than ever. I'd been waiting for an empty moment, some slot of time where the night enthusiasts were scattered throughout the secret basement, nowhere near me. But it didn't sound as though they were going to leave the living room anymore. More of them were gathering, and I was still stuck in this closet. Is this all of them? A night enthusiast panted. Half of them escaped, another night enthusiast said. That's what happens when you charge in snarling and start grabbing people, another night enthusiast said. We should have come back when everyone was asleep. We still did well. We captured almost 50 of them. That's not bad. And we got the old man. He was coming back from some mission. Perfect timing, if you ask me. I felt icy. Ugh. I felt a stab of empathy. Mr. McGillicuddy. Oh, he'd been investigating a way to cure wrath. I wondered if he'd found a solution, only to be taken prisoner. And he had the tiny pin that housed our prison, hidden somewhere. Did he have it in his pocket? Had he concealed it somewhere in the secret basement? The night enthusiasts would torture him. They would torture him to find out. And he was just an old man. And he hadn't asked to be a leader in the first place. I found myself wanting to burst out of the closet and yell, "Oi, I'm the leader! Torture me!" If someone was going to be punished on everyone's behalf, it should be someone who had chosen it with all their heart and soul, someone young and ferocious. This didn't seem fair to Mr. McGillicuddy. I wondered if I could get him out somehow, right now. Of course, if I rescued him, the night enthusiasts would only turn and torture someone else. Would they put anyone into train cars? Damn. I felt as if a herd of poisonous buffaloes had just stampeded through my life. In a matter of minutes, everything was in shambles. And, assuming the night enthusiasts got the pin away from Mr. McGillicuddy, they would enter the murder object, find our secret dungeon, find the night enthusiast leaders. Dawn would be free again. Our situations would be completely reversed. Their leader free and our leader in chains. Oh, damn, damn, damn! They knew about the base! I still hadn't gotten over it. This was the end of something. And I was one of the few people still free. At least Ariana and Noble weren't here. Neither of them should end up in the hands of the night enthusiasts. They'd both angered the night enthusiasts very deeply by learning their secrets and then leaving the fold. I listened to the sounds in the living room grow louder. "There are probably more of them hiding," one of the night enthusiasts said. "We've got all the ones that were sitting comfortably in the open. Now start looking under the beds, in cupboards. If they're here, we'll drag them out." "Ooh, if they're in closets 4 feet away, we'll drag them out." He may as well have said that. I was done for. I tried teleporting, and I suddenly realized that I couldn't. I racked my brain, but I couldn't remember if anyone had ever teleported out of the secret basement before. We always walked out and used the murder object, so we could teleport around in 1921. Now, as I tried to teleport out, I found that I couldn't do it. Was that a rule? Something I hadn't known about? An added measure of security? No teleporting in or out? Or was this something that the night enthusiasts had just added, to keep all of us hidden mice from squeaking free? Whichever it was, I was done for. I was right in front of them, barely concealed behind a piece of wood. I would soon be bound and gagged, like all the rest of them. And, if you remember, Diary, the night enthusiasts were very keen to get a hold of me. I was the girl who could break spells with a wish. I was a very valuable addition, and they had pinned an awful lot of murders on me already. All that work shouldn't go to waste. No, as soon as they had their hands on Melinda Maudie Merkel, they were going to go to great lengths to ensure I never got away again. I had to get out of this closet. But how? I leaned against the wall, my head and shoulders buried in a stuffy fur coat. I squeezed my eyes shut. If there was a murder object in this closet somewhere, I should be able to use it. And of course, I did have one. I still had the china eye. Not only the one that was tucked into your spine, Diary, but also the fresh one. I still had it in my pocket. You remember that when I knelt beside the dead man, the one who'd smashed the teacup into tiny bits, I'd taken the broken piece of china and put it in my pocket. I had my eye in your spine, and I had the original, fresher version in my pocket. I wasn't sure which one to use, but I knew that either way, the china eye would take me right back to where I'd last left Mara. Poor Mara. She was probably going to see a lot of me. Mara. I needed to find out what had happened to her in 1921. Was she still around? Could she help Wrath? They had been engaged. But I didn't have time to think about that now. I needed to teleport out, and fast. I put my hand into my pocket to use the china eye. But it wasn't there. Mara's bottle of magic jelly was there, but the china eye wasn't. I spread my fingers, checked the furthest edges of the pocket. Still, it wasn't there. I felt a small stab of panic. I checked my other pocket. Still nothing. I felt a larger stab of panic. Finally, I drew you out, Diary, and I checked inside your spine. The china eye was gone. I went into a full-on panic, and I assume you don't blame me one bit. Not only could I not escape this closet, my china eye was gone. It was the thing that had made me a magic unusual. Losing it felt like some kind of evil omen. I felt bereft. Who was I without my little china eye? How would my eyes possibly keep glowing in the dark now that my murder object was gone? I leaned against the closet wall, and I felt like everything was over. Night enthusiasts in my basement, my china eye missing. I felt like I'd stumbled into the wrong life. No, you have the wrong Maud. I thought about using Mara's magic jelly to teleport out of the closet, but I was paranoid. My hands were shaking. What if I couldn't draw the symbol by the time they came in? What if they used the symbol right after and followed me everywhere I went, hopping from symbol to symbol? I didn't want to give my secret away. I didn't want to give away the fact that we could use these symbols to get wherever we wanted to go. I couldn't think straight. All I wanted in that moment was a murder object. I wanted to get out. I wanted to grab something and leave. No shaking fingers, no symbol to draw. I just wanted to go. And I wasn't deciding fast enough. I'm not sure what would have happened to me if not for, well, you'll see what happens. Heavy footsteps tromped towards the closet door. I heard a night enthusiast say, "Hey, anybody in this closet? Ha ha!" And then the door handle started to turn. No time to draw an eye now. I leaned backwards into the stuffy fur coat, and I shut my eyes, and I willed, with everything in my being, to be anywhere but here. The closet went strangely quiet. I waited for the doorknob to open, but when nothing happened, I cracked my eye open. I was still in the dark closet, but the light coming from under the door seemed different. It was also colder. Had I magically wished all the night enthusiasts out of the secret basement somehow? Then I realized I was smelling something tangy and foul. I held my breath, then tentatively opened the door. I was in an old mansion. The woodwork was painted. The room was cold, like the fire hadn't been lit in weeks. For crying out loud, diary, the coat had been a murder object all along. The stuffy black fur coat. It had transported me to wherever this was. I stepped out of the closet. I didn't know where I was, but for now, I needed to get further into this era. If the night enthusiasts decided to start checking murder objects for hiding magic unusuals, I couldn't be close by. And if the night enthusiasts had any sense, they would perform tests and then pile every murder object they found in the secret basement into a locked room. That way, if we tried to come back, we'd be a prisoner either way. Thankfully for me, I had Mars jelly still in my pocket. If it worked the same way it had last time, I would be able to get back into 1921 whenever I wished, from inside this murder object. I wouldn't have to dodge any night enthusiasts by going back the regular way. As soon as I wished to go back to 1921, I could. The trouble was, diary, I didn't wish. Perhaps that sounds calloused when my friends were in such distress, but it wasn't smart to return to 1921 just yet. I was a wanted murderess. I was a wanted magic unusual. Both the regular world and my world wanted me behind bars, and I couldn't think of a single place to hide. Everything had been infiltrated by the night enthusiasts. Noble's apartment wasn't safe. If I tried to hide with old friends, they would probably turn me into the police. I also had no plan, and until I had a plan, it wouldn't help anyone for me to be in 1921. First things first, I decided to find out where I was. I crept out of the closet and looked round the room. It was a dining room. Very nice. Chilly. I wondered, with a creepy feeling, if there would be a body nearby. Nothing was lying around, however. There was no blood on the walls or anything. I realized that this murder object had probably been entered before. Many years ago, perhaps. Time had been moved forward inside of it. The body had probably been gone for a few days, even weeks. I continued to explore. I crept out into the hall and listened. It was dead quiet. I felt like I was inside the resting bones of something. I crept down the hall and opened another door. The chairs in here were covered with white sheets. A vacant home, perhaps? I thought of the murder. Perhaps the family had absconded in grief. Not a pleasant prospect. I crept down to the front hall of the house, and this too was boarded up. It whistled with silence. I peeped through the window, got a good mental image of the alley, and then teleported into it. Then I walked around to the front of the house. On the street, I saw a horse and carriage go past. The men were wearing silly hats. It looked like it was about 1890, maybe 1895. I'm not a good judge. I stared up at the outside of the mansion. It was huge, dark, a little creepy. It was in fine condition and only looked to have been abandoned for a few weeks. The lower windows were boarded up, but the paint on the house was still crisp. The moulding was painted in blues and yellows, and the whole thing was painted charcoal grey. A sign in the front window said, "For sale. Contact the offices of Wallace and Threed." I said. Diary, don't tell on me. I know it's wicked. But I teleported back inside the house and began to snoop around. I found a beautiful vase, still left on its shelf. I found a gilded music box, too. I pocketed them, and then I teleported to New York. I walked until my feet hurt, found a good pawn shop, and pawned the things. Then, with money in hand, I bought a gown that belonged in 1890, put it on, and teleported back to the mansion. Why, I am sure you are wondering, Diary, did I teleport back to that house? Why not hide in the New York of the 1890s? Well, besides the smell, I didn't want to be in New York. I would have been impossible to find in New York, and I wanted to be found. I didn't know what city this mansion was in, but it didn't matter. The air was chilly, so I knew I was somewhere in the north. Wearing my new dress, I walked through the town, which wasn't extensively large. It appeared to just be Main Street and a few offshoots, until I found the offices of Wallace and Threed. I stepped up and let myself in. The door jangled, and a clerk looked up at me. He was young, with a pen tucked behind his ear, and he eyed me in confusion. "Yes, I'd like to rent the mansion across town," I said. The clerk stood up. He stood up so quickly he almost knocked his head on the lamp that hung above him. Yes, miss. Yes, ma'am," he said. "Won't you wait right there? I will fetch Mr. Threed at once." I waited in the front room while the clerk went to get Mr. Threed. A minute later, an older man in spectacles came forward. He wore a tweed jacket and a high collar. He smiled and bent his head. "Good afternoon, madam," he said. "How might I help you?" "Yes, I would like to rent or buy the mansion across town," I said. "Your sign was in the window." The mansion on 3rd and Clark, my dear?" Mr. Threed said. "Yes," I said, "that's the one." I could tell Mr. Threed was looking me up and down, as if checking to see if I was weak and frail and cuckoo. "Oh, yes, of course, madam, of course," he said. "However, the sum for renting such a house would be—" And then he delicately leaned forward and wrote a price down on a sheet of paper. I could tell he expected me to gawk, stammer, and walk away. It was a lot of money, although, honestly, the price wasn't bad. I wondered if that was the 1890s being cheaper than 1921, or the recent murder, or both. "That will be fine," I said. "Do you want a down payment?" Mr. Threed seemed to relax. I knew that at first he'd thought I was a nutty woman who had no idea what she was doing. Perhaps a housewife, out for a wander, who thought houses were free. "Yes, madam," he said. He seemed significantly cheered. "A down payment of the first month's rent." "Do when?" I said. "Do now," he said, "if you'd like to claim it." "I will give you 10% now of the first month's rent," I said, "and 100% in 3 days if I still like the house. That's 10% you get now either way, and 110% total if I decide to stay. Is that agreeable to you?" Mr. Threed glanced at his clerk, then wetted his lips. "Well," he said, "allow me to consult with Mr. Wallace." With that, Mr. Threed disappeared back into his office. I stood there while the clerk awkwardly stared at Mr. Threed's door. Finally, the clerk moved towards me. He spoke in a hushed voice. Miss, you want to buy the house that's across town, that's for sale?" "Yes," I said. I was enjoying his secretive tone. He seemed to be scared to tell me something, and I couldn't wait. "That house," the clerk said, "well, I'm sorry, but with you being a lady and seeming so sweet and everything, I want you to know. That house is haunted." "Haunted?" I said. "Yes." "That's a pretty rumor," I said. "Why do people think it's haunted?" "Oh, ma'am," the clerk said, "they don't think it's haunted. They know it's haunted." "Really?" I said. "Ma'am, I can tell you don't believe me," the clerk said, "and I don't blame you. But we haven't been able to lease this home for months. A man—" He lowered his voice again. A man was murdered there 3 months ago. We've tried 6 families. No one in town will take it anymore. I assume you're an outsider?" "I don't care whether or not the house is haunted," I said. "Ma'am," the clerk said, "please try to believe me. I have seen things. Myself. Something lives in that house." He lowered his voice. "I've heard wailing." That was the moment I felt scared. All this time I'd assumed the only haunting was magic unusuals popping out of closets. But wailing. In my experience, night enthusiasts or magic unusuals don't typically wail. What if it really was haunted? Cursed? Dangerous? I was too new to the magic unusual world. Magic existed. Did ghosts exist too? At that moment, Mr. Threed came back out of his office. "Madam," he said, "I've thought it over. You can pay the 10% now and see what you think of the place." Mr. Threed, I see, had decided some money was better than none. He didn't expect me to stay. "Excellent," I said. "I'll take it." I could only hope I wasn't about to deal with a real ghost. We hope you've enjoyed Season 3, Episode 10, Too Many Night Enthusiasts Spoil the Kitchen, of McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop. McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop is written and performed by Minerva Sweeney Wren. All rights reserved. Sometimes you just want everything in your life to be green. Everything. Your hair, your nose, your dishes, your curtains, your dish soap, your dog, your eyeballs. Green is so soothing, like grass, and trees, and spring days. Don't you wish everything in your life from head to foot was green, green, green? Well, with this new can of sprayable absinthe... Hang on. Are you hearing an advertisement for sprayable absinthe right now? You are not. Do you know why? Because this podcast is free and always will be, and this podcast is advertisement free and always will be. However, there is a unique opportunity awaiting you if you choose to support this podcast and become a $1 patron. Minerva Sweeney Wren hopes to start a second podcast called The Dark and Decrepit Planet of Spin, where instead of merely listening each week, you will solve real puzzles and make real choices that determine the outcome of the tale. Think of it as an enormous collaborative storytelling adventure. For more information, please go to patreon.com/SweeneyWren. Please consider sharing this podcast with your friends. A post on the audio drama subreddit, an in-person recommendation, or a social media share do more to market this audio drama than anything Minerva Sweeney Wren can do on her own. She relies on you. McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop will continue with Season 3, Episode 11, Haunted House.